when uploaded to Blackboard, it switched them over to the left-hand side.
Okay. Yeah, that can happen. And what program are you using?
Microsoft?
You're using Microsoft? Okay. Is it a real version or is it an imitation?
No, it's a real version. It came with my laptop.
All right. Yeah, because sometimes people will try to use an imitation software and it doesn't work well. So no matter what they do, it just doesn't work. So yeah, Blackboard is kind of funny. It says it'll accept a lot of different platforms, but the only platform that really works well, there's two of them. One of them is Microsoft. The other one is Adobe.
Oh, okay.
So those are the two that are acceptable. And even then, it sometimes won't work well with them. So it's hard to say why.
Okay.
So do you have any specific questions?
No, I was disappointed that I didn't earn the full points.
No.
It was silly mistakes. I didn't use the quotes. I didn't realize that I had to put the actual quotation marks in there, so I lost a few points there, but I'll try harder next chapter.
Okay, I know you will. Yeah, that's not a big issue. So have you gone over the requirements for chapter 2?
Briefly, I looked at them.
Okay.
Yeah. So is it basically we're using the literature review that we did in our previous class?
Yes, you're going to use that. You're going to add the 4 new articles.
Okay.
Okay. And then you're going to put them in the format that shows there in the rubric for chapter 2, where it says a review of related literature. Okay, so you're not going to just simply take your review from 695 and just repost it.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't do that. The university has a clear policy on that once you submit something for grading, you cannot use it again,
Right.
not in its entire form. So what you'd be doing is rewriting it.
Okay.
This time it should be a little bit easier because you'll have your bulleted points. As you see, you'll see those bulleted points in there. So you'll make sure that for each of the 12 articles that you're submitting, that you're going to answer those particular questions there. And then you're going to group them so that they fit logically into the paper.
Okay.
So when you looked at the different articles that you got off of the internet, when you looked at them, you noticed that there were a number of references, and the author took those references and put them in groups as to what the author was trying to prove.
Okay.
Okay, did you notice that? Or sometimes we read those things and we don't understand what they're trying to do.
Yeah, no, I think I picked up on that a little bit.
Okay, so the main issue there is to put them in groups so that there's some logic to the argument, because you're trying to pose an argument for a particular type of intervention. And so you want to include the research that has been done in the past on that intervention. And there's certain aspects of the intervention that are important to you. So those are the things that you're going to highlight and put into groups. So in the paper that you're going to write, the intervention has certain steps to it that you as the researcher will want to follow, and you'll want to group all your backing information into certain segments. And it's really important when we do the research, we basically have to give backing to what we're writing. So if we make a statement, we have to back it up. Okay.
Okay.
So there was a student that made in a paper made a statement, a very profound statement, and it's one that well, I agree with the opinion. I agree with the opinion. However, it was stated in a dogmatic way, and there was no backing on it. In fact, the evidence, the written evidence, shows just the opposite. So what I had to point out to that individual is that without the proper backing, then you're not lending validity to your argument. And if somebody checks the resource and says, wait a minute, that resource doesn't say that at all. And it just takes your whole research and all that effort, and it might have taken months, it might have taken years to bring all of that information together. It just goes, it flies right out the window with a statement that's not backed up. So just, we have to be careful of making those statements. And there'll be sometimes we'll have an opinion, and it's okay to state the opinion, but we should not be dogmatic about an opinion that we cannot back up. Okay.
Okay. Is it better to just leave out your opinion from these kinds of papers then?
Not necessarily. If
Okay.
you state that it's an opinion,
Okay.
and that the opinion is based on your research, and you can name some research resources that this is the way that this particular researcher feels about this matter, and here's the backing on it. Okay, but to make a statement, for example, that the IDEA law specifically says blah blah blah, and you go into the law and it doesn't say that, then the person looking at it is going to say, hey, wait a minute, it's a nice opinion, but you're saying that this is fact, when really it isn't. It's not a fact. It's just your opinion. It's a strong feeling about something. And as researchers, you can have strong feelings, but we just want to be careful how we present those strong feelings.
I want to note that when I was logging in, the first passcode I tried to use was incorrect, the one that you put in the email. So I used the one from the previous Zoom session and it was correct. I think the new one says 219 and then this one was 214. Really? That worked. Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that.
So that might be why the only reason why I'm in, I'm the only one here. I was thinking about putting it in our discussion board, but I don't know if people are going to check that.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, thank you for pointing that out. I didn't realize.
You're welcome.
That. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Oh, phooey. Okay. I don't know if I have a chance to correct that. Let's see here. Let me. Oh, here we go. Oh my goodness, you're absolutely right. I keyed in a 9 instead of a 4. I'm gonna have to slap my hands.
Yeah, we all make mistakes.
No, thank you for understanding.
No worries. I kept trying and then I'm like, let me check a previous email to make sure. So that's what I did.
All right. Hopefully that corrects it. Maybe we'll get some folks to come in now.
Yeah.
If not, I'm recording the session, so I will embed it into the course, probably in the announcements, and that way anybody who missed it can take advantage of that.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see here. All right, so most everybody's has already submitted the PDFs from 695. Some have not, so if they haven't been submitted, then they should be submitted along with chapter 2. Okay. All right. Well, I will go into the second part of the meeting because some folks had asked me some questions about Microsoft Word. And so I'll try to help dispel some of the problems with Word. So I'm going to go to my sharing and hopefully be able to see my screen here. All right, so are you looking at the sample paper for assignment 2?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so this is a sample that was turned in, I guess, about a month ago. This is not one of my students. Let me see who came in so I can give them welcome. All right, I can't, this is not allowing me to maximize my screen. Okay, so whoever just came in, welcome. I apologize for the giving the wrong information. Okay, so here in Word, you'll see that some obvious mistakes were made here. Whoever graded this paper probably didn't understand how this works. But for the running head, we know now from version 7 that we don't need the words running head in there, so we can just delete those, and just your running head will just be basically the title of the page, the paper. 51 characters is the maximum that you should have in the running head. The reason for that is that we don't want the running head to go to 2 lines. So that should be good enough. Okay, there's some elements that are missing here. For example, the title of the capstone project is there. The full student's name is not there, so that should be there. And then the name of the master's program, that is not there. Should be saying Master of Education and Special Education. And then the full name of the professor, and then the month and year of the start of the course. So it's not the date that the assignment is being turned in, but it's the month and the year. So in this case, it would be October 2020. Okay. All right, and then in the abstract, okay, where's the abstract here? Okay, interesting. I wouldn't have used this this paper as an example. There is no abstract here. There should be one. There should be one for every paper that's turned in. And then you have your keywords. Okay, so one of the problems that occurs is that as you're writing and you're hitting that enter key, then you have a situation like right here where it looks like there's an extra line that's added into the paper, and that should not be there. This should be double spaced only. So for example, if I highlight some of this right here, I can go into the program and find out what has happened here. Why is there this extra space here? And to do that, then I'm going to click on the home button on the ribbon up here at the top. And then I'm going to move over here to the paragraph tool. So that'll be right here. And then there's a little tiny arrow there, and I'm going to click on that. And I get this window over here. Are you able to see that little window there?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
All right. So you look here and you'll see some important information about the paragraph. I notice right here where it says spacing. Okay, before the paragraph, 0 points. After the paragraph, 9.8 points. And that's where the problem is. Okay. In this paper, it shows up here. I'm looking over here at the left upper hand corner, and it says that the paper is written in Times New Roman, and it's the font size is 12. Okay, the font size being 12, that means that also not only is the font 12, but the space between the lines is also 12. So now over here where I see 9.8, that is an addition to the 12. So it's no longer double spaced. Well, actually for double space, it would come out to 24. But in this case, you add the 9.8 to the 24. Now it's about 33, almost 34. That's almost 3 lines. And that's exactly what it looks like right here. It looks like there's 3 lines instead of 2. So the way to fix that is to go over here to where it says after and change this to 0. So we'll just click here until it goes to 0. So you see how I changed that to 0? All right, now watch this part of the screen over here when I click OK. Did you see what happened? See, it pulled it in. Now both of these paragraphs are double spaced. Okay, so this is an important thing to remember, because when you try to upload this into another program such as Blackboard, Blackboard may not understand what that extra spacing is, and it can throw off your format. So it's best to have the paper formatted properly to begin with. So I'm going to undo that because I don't want to destroy the. Okay, so if we do the same thing over here, we go to our paragraph tool. See, we have that same 9.8. So I can tighten that up. Here's where it gets a little dicey. We have not only our paragraph is ending, but we have a headliner there and then a new paragraph. So let's see what happens here. Okay, there are 3 different spacings in here, so it's not showing up here. It only wants to talk about one at a time. So let me change this to just this part right here. All right, I gathered too much of it. Let me try it again. Okay, that's the 9.8. So I could close that up. What happens if I go here? Now what happened? Look how how much space is in there. Extra space, it's 21.3 points. So that makes it way, way too wide in here. You've got so much empty space. When you're hitting the enter key, trying to go from one paragraph to the other, sometimes we think, well, I need a little bit of extra space between the paragraphs. You don't. APA 6th version and 7th version, they all say strictly double spacing. So when you do the double spacing, then it has to be for the whole paper. Any questions so far? If you do, just speak up because I can't see anybody right now with this.
No questions.
Okay. All right. So as you can see, there's places in here where this could be tightened up and make it look better. Now see, here's another problem right here. See here where you have this paper or this paragraph starting way up here at the top, and there's no space at all between the running head and the paragraph. So that becomes a problem. So all of that can be changed very easily by using this paragraph tool. So now we get down to toward the end here. And we get into the references. Now you see there's a lot of extra spacing in here for the references. Okay, I'm going to turn on a little tool that's going to tell me how this was formatted. So you see this little tool, it looks like a paragraph indicator right up here. If I click on that, then it allows me to see every place where the keyboard was struck, spaces, the enter key, all of those things. These symbols like this tells me where the enter key was struck. So we can see here that there was extra space here because instead of just simply continuing to type, this student hit the enter key. Didn't need to hit the enter key. In fact, if I delete that enter key, let's see what happens to this entry right here. It pulled it up, took this extra spacing out. Now I can come back in here and use my hanging indent, and it should be able to clear that up. Hanging indent should be 0.5. Okay, so if you mark it over here on this side of the tool here, 0.05, it will put the correct number in there. The indentation here is incorrect. I'm not sure how that happened, but sometimes they happen. And then look at the extra spacing. See, that just doesn't work. So we need to change that down to 0. So now doing that and then changing this to double space, let's see what happens here to this entry. It cleared up the problem, cleared it up completely. Okay, another little problem right here with an extra keystroke. See, and I can see that because there's a little dot. See, so I'm able to fix that. So that's a little tool that helps you if you're wondering why you're having problems trying to align things in Word. Click on that little tool there and it'll take you back into your document, and it'll show you every keystroke that you've made. And then that way you can find out if you have extra keystrokes in there that should not be in there, and you can delete them out. Okay, and then many times that will solve the problem. Okay, here's another problem that I see with this. Gilliver et al. In the reference. It should not be that. You need Gilliver and all the other authors for the et al. The only time you use the et al. Is in the body of the paper for your citations. So if you have more than 2 authors in a citation, then you can use the et al. But I see this many times where the authors are not listed. So I will go into the National University Library. I'll pull up this article and I'll see who the authors are. And so this would be counted as an error. And also this one, the same thing. Now, if there were too many authors, then you would have to list the first several authors, and then you could put et al. But not in the references like this. That's completely incorrect. Okay. So any questions about how to go back into your document to make minor corrections? Is it clear as mud? All right, here's a couple of things that you can do to set up your Microsoft so that it'll help you out. One of them is if you go to File and go down to Options, it'll bring up this window right here, and you'll have a number of things that you can change to create new defaults. Okay, in the General tab, I would leave that alone. I wouldn't change anything on this page. The display, I wouldn't change anything there. Here's where you might want to change things, is in your proofing. So you can set this up to look for certain errors in your paper. For example, spelling errors, punctuation errors, things of that nature. You can set this up to do that. Here's a neat little feature here that I don't know if you're aware of, but it's in the autocorrect. Now, we all write letters to parents, and sometimes as you're typing away, get a little bit tired of typing in the same thing over and over and over. Maybe the name of the school, maybe the address of the school. So here, if you go into the autocorrect feature, you'll see that there's a blank space here. So replace whatever you type here with whatever you type here. Okay, so for example, in my case, I type in MRG so that I can just type my name, it pops up. So on the paper here, if I just type in MRG, then it'll type my name completely. Then if I put an address, I can just put part of the address and it'll show the entire address. So it speeds things up. You may have a particular signature that you want to use for certain papers. You can do that here. You can set those up. So this autocorrect feature is very helpful. So when you're writing your letters, you need your return address, in your salutations and your closings, then you can do that automatically. It can be a time saver. Okay, and then here it's when correcting spelling and grammar in Word. Okay, so I would check all of these items here. If you do a lot of typing in French or in Spanish, then these 2 items here might be of use to you. So here in your writing style for the English, I would check grammar and refinements, and then you go to settings and tell it what you want to check. And I usually have it checked most everything in there. Now what it does is it flags the items. It doesn't correct them for you. It flags them so that you know where those issues are. That way you can go back into your document and you can make the corrections as needed. The program will make suggestions, but it will not make the changes for you. You have to do the changes. Okay. All right, so you check these things. One point that I notice in a lot of the papers that I'm seeing in this class is that punctuation is being placed outside of the quotation marks. The punctuation marks should be inside the quotation marks, not outside. And then spaces between sentences. Back when I was going to high school, I won't say when because it'll date me, but we had to put 2 spaces. That's because we're using manual typewriters. But now with the modern typewriters, actually we don't even use typewriters anymore. So now it's just 1 single space between sentences, not 2. So you can flag this so that it'll tell you if you make a mistake and put too many spaces. Okay, cliches are not acceptable in academic writing, and contractions are not acceptable in academic writing. The only time that a contraction is quote unquote acceptable is if it's used in dialogue. So for example, if you're quoting Johnny and Johnny said, "I can't do this stuff." That may sound like something out of one of your former classes, right? So, but you notice that I didn't say that he would not do it. I just said he said, "I can't do it." See, so if you're quoting somebody, even if it's it's not a real quote, it's something that you would think that somebody would say, then you can go ahead and use the contraction, but it needs to be in dialogue. Okay. I don't worry about gender-specific language. We don't usually have to worry too much about that in academia. But people first language is important, and unfortunately, that's not one of the items that can be flagged here. So we just have to be conscious of it, that when we talk about people who have disabilities, we don't say that that's a disabled person. We say that's a person with a disability or a person with a challenge. So in dealing with deaf folks, they prefer to have deaf put in front of them. Say, I'm deaf mute. So that's a cultural thing. So we honor that, we respect that when they ask us to do that. I've gotten chewed out a number of times for saying people with hearing disabilities. They don't like to be referred to that way. So it's okay. All right, so then you can also tell the program where to save your document. If you've ever been typing away at something and all of a sudden the power goes out, you lose everything. Oh, where is my document now when the power comes back on? Well, if you didn't have a special place to save it, it's on your hard drive someplace, but it may be a challenge for you to be able to pull it back up. So if you tell the program where to automatically save your documents and tell how many times in an hour that you want it to be auto saved, you can do that. For example, in this case, auto recover information every 10 minutes. That's pretty much a default. If you're a fast typer, 10 minutes might be 4 or 5 pages, right? So maybe you want to set it at a lower rate, maybe once a minute to once every 2 minutes. It'll do that in the background. It will not slow you down in the work that you're doing. But at least it'll auto-save it and it'll put it someplace where you want it to go. And if the default location is a pen drive or a thumb drive, then go ahead and set it up that way. I never left my IEPs on a school laptop or computer. Things can happen. Those files can be broken into, And as a teacher, you're responsible for the safety of those files. So I would save them on something that you have control of all the time. All right, and then language, of course, you can set it up so that you can switch from one language to another. Many students in my classes, their family spoke Spanish, so I would write a lot of letters in Spanish. So I set up Spanish as one of the default languages on the computer, and so I could just type in Spanish. A little keyboard will show up on the screen there with the where the Spanish keys are, the special keys are. So with the tilde and the accent marks and things like that. So you can set that up. And then of course you have other things in here as well. There's a trust center. Probably notice here at the top of my ribbon that I have a few things that normally do not exist in Word, such as Grammarly and Acrobat. So I use those programs extensively. And so there, I've trusted them into my Word document. So now if I go back to this document, hopefully I'm back in that sample. Can everybody see the sample document here? Okay, now I'm going to turn on Acrobat, or not Acrobat, but Grammarly. And let me take this off. I will open up Grammarly and it should go in and correct this. I'm not seeing it happen.
Professor Glatfelter, the screen you were looking at prior to this, how did you pull that little one up?
Okay, how did I didn't quite hear you very well. How did I pull up?
The screen you were looking in earlier, that where you showed us about the language or the different things we can have checked. I entered after you were already speaking on it, but where did you access that?
Okay, good question. Thank you. All right, so I'll go over here. I've got Word open, and I'm going to go up over here to the far left, the upper corner here, where it says File. Do you see that?
Yes.
You click on that, go down to the bottom where it says Options.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and you click on Options, and that will pull up this little window here, and then you have different pages in here where you can make those changes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And then the other part that I was showing at the very beginning was if you're at the home part in the ribbon on Word, if you're here at home, this is what tells you what's going on with the document. So right now, this document is set up in Times New Roman with a size 12 font. Now, if I move over a little bit here, I can change the font very easily with these little buttons in here. But right here, this is a very powerful tool, the paragraph tool. And when I click on that, then it opens up another little window here. So now I can see what's going on with the format of the paragraph itself. So I see some problems in here. For example, indentation, it should be 0. And it's off just a little bit. It's also set automatically at hanging indent, which it should not be at this part of the document. Okay, so it should, right now, it should be sitting first line and then a ½ inch. Okay, that way it's going to go through the paper, and as I'm typing away, every time I start a new paragraph, it will automatically indent that paragraph. Okay, so I don't have to go in there and hit tab every time I want to start a new paragraph. And then if I want to keep my spacing correct so that it's double spaced throughout, then when I look here at the spacing part, I make sure that the before and after are set at 0. That way it's not going to add anything to my font, the spacing between those lines. For example, right now in this sample document, the line spacing is set at multiple at 1.08 spaces between the lines. Well, that's incorrect. That's going to cause problems throughout the whole paper. So this should be set at double space. Okay, and this should be set at 0. I'm not going to invoke that in this document because it is the sample. So I'm just illustrating this to show you that, yeah, it's a sample. We want to see what the sample looks like, but we just have to be careful how we use the sample. It's just to show us how the grouping of the information, how that should appear in the paper. Okay, the formatting on this is off quite a bit in a lot of areas. Okay, but using those little tools there are going to help a lot. And like I say, if I use the Grammarly, yeah, Grammarly finally came up. And so if I just evoke Microsoft Grammar Checker, it only picked up, I think, about 10 or 15 errors, very, very minor errors. But you can see on the right side of the screen there, as I'm scrolling up, you see a lot of issues popping up there in Grammarly, which are giving me some suggestions on corrections that should be made. Plus, in the document itself, it's underlining. For example, you'll have spellings, you'll have word use. Sometimes you'll see a word that's used and it's not used properly in the sentence. It doesn't belong in the sentence. You'll also find that if you're writing a sentence, and let's say that you put two sentences together with just a comma, well, that creates a run-on sentence. It's not a proper sentence. It should have a semicolon there. Or if you just want the comma, you need to put an and in there. So the and connects the two sentences together. But without that conjunction in there, you cannot use a comma to separate two sentences. You have to use a semicolon. So Grammarly will pick that up and bring it to your attention. Okay, and that's something that sometimes, you know, we're so busy, we're working hard, our eyes are getting tired, we just want to get through the paper, and we miss a lot of errors that way. So by using the Grammarly, it flags those issues, and then you choose which of those items that you want to correct. There are false negatives in Grammarly, but there's not quite as many as in Microsoft. So it's your choice. Grammarly is free. You can embed it into the Word document, and it will stay there. And you can use it. You can turn it off anytime you want. It'll even do a plagiarism check if you want it to. So it's a very interesting tool. Okay. Any questions so far?
How did you install Grammarly into Word? I use it through Google, but how did you get it to be like a link on your Word document?
Yeah, if you go to Grammarly.com and then download Grammarly for Microsoft Word.
Oh, okay.
Okay, then it should embed it in there. If it doesn't do it automatically, Grammarly will give you a set of instructions that will help you to embed it. So usually it's a trust issue. So you go into the trust settings for Microsoft and tell Microsoft to trust Grammarly, and it'll do it readily. So once you get the Grammarly on your computer, it will also check your emails and help you with your spelling and grammar with your emails and many other things, like you say with Google, things of that nature. So it's a very powerful help. And the nice thing about it, it's free. So take advantage of it while it's free. Okay. So are there any other questions? Any questions about the assignment coming up?
Yes, I have a question regarding chapter 2.
All right.
Um,
Let me close this out if everybody's
Okay.
done with this. Well, I can go ahead and bring it back up anytime I need to. There we go. Okay, now I can see more of you there. Welcome. And I apologize for the typo, writing that 9 instead of a 4. I know it messed you guys up, and I really apologize for that. All right, so chapter 2. All right, so go ahead and ask your question.
So for the instructions, it looks like we're just going to be adding on to the article analysis that we did for SPD 695, right? And that's just the 4 additional, I forget what they are, the articles. That's really the only change we're making, is just adding those 4 in and then resubmitting that whole thing.
Yeah, you need to pretty much rewrite the paper, just rearrange it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So that you follow the directions that are on there. So figure out in there what are some natural groupings that you can put those articles into. You have 12 articles. If you take any of those articles and read it completely through, you'll notice that that particular author takes and groups his or her references into specific themes. And so that's what you're going to do with these. So you're going to pretty much follow that same example that the other authors that you are quoting from, you're going to use pretty much that same format. And if you look at the 12 articles, you're going to find that that's very similar in each of those articles. So you'll have a number of references, and then they get grouped. So that's basically what you want to do. So remember that the 4 articles that you're adding to the 8 that you got in 695, those need to be less than 10 years old. Okay, so that's the date that they were published, and so you want to make sure that the first publication of the article is less than 10 years. Sometimes you'll find that somebody will publish an article to an association, and then a couple years later it gets published to a journal. Well, the first time that it was published is the publication date. Okay, so it might be borderline through a journal, but the first time that it was submitted, it might have been considerably more than 10 years. So just be aware of that. Okay, the purpose or the reason for doing that is so that you know how to research current things. Some of the people that we used to research back in the 60s and 70s, some of the ideas are kind of outdated now. They're valid in some circles, but they just don't have the same meaning that they do now because of advanced research, new forms of technology that we use now, different training programs that teachers go through now that we didn't have back in the 60s and 70s. So that's why we need to have some of those fresh ideas into the research. So that's why we ask that certain parts be less than 10 years old. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yes. Is it okay to use, like, if there was an article that we used in chapter 1, can we use that again for chapter 2, or do we have to find 4 new complete, like,
No,
articles?
you need to have a minimum of 12 articles.
Okay.
Okay, so sometimes you're going to reference the same article more than once through the series of papers. Okay, we have basically 4 papers, but they're going into one. So the end result is 1 paper, not 4. So if you need to refer to an article more than once, then you can do that. Just make sure that your inline citations are correct. That's the big deal. Okay. And speaking of the citations and references, it's important to remember that when you cite a source, it needs to be cited in the paragraph. Okay, it also needs to show up in the references. Okay, the spelling of the iterations need to be the same. I've seen papers where the same author is the name is written 3 different ways, and that it just that doesn't work, does it? It needs to be consistent throughout the paper. So we want to pay attention to that. And then if we have a reference, maybe we looked at something and we thought, yeah, I really like this, but you didn't find a place in the paper to make a reference to it or a citation, then should that be in the references? If you didn't use it in the paper, should that reference be there in the reference section? Okay, you're shaking your heads no, and that's correct. It shouldn't be there. Okay. So just remember that if it's in the references, there must be an inline citation for it. And if there's an inline citation for something, it must be in the references. So it's kind of checks back and forth, back and forth. And one way that I use to verify that I have used a particular reference is I will double click on the last name of the author, and I will hit Control F. Okay, Control F. That will search your document to see how many times that name shows up in your document. If it shows that it shows up only one time, you can't use it, because that one time is the one time that you're using it. It doesn't show up anyplace else in the paper. Okay, so does that make sense? That might be a time saver, so you don't have to take a name and then go back through all those pages and scour your document and try to find that name. Did I put that name in there? And then if you know for a fact that you did cite that and you only come up with one instance, well, maybe you misspelled or changed the spelling inside the document. Well, that'll give you a chance to go back and to find that and to make that correction. So that just really polishes up your paper, makes it look really good. Okay. So any other questions? Okay, do you notice how the points are set up on it? Okay, you get 2 points for each article, but each article must have an APA citation in the text and a correspondent reference under the reference section. It must speak of participants, must have a research question, purpose of study, the independent variable, the dependent variable, whether it's an experimental design or not, what the results of the study were, and a personal comment from you as to what you thought of that study. Was it helpful? Did it help prove your point, or did it kind of say, well, maybe that point wasn't so great after all? Okay, so those are the qualifiers for those 2 points per. All right, and then 6 points in showing what you learned from the existing published literature on your research question. Group the 12 articles into multiple subheadings. Use resources like these to help you with this headings and subheadings and APA style. And then you'll notice that there's a link there in that rubric. So you can click on that link and it'll give you some examples. Okay, you create new subheadings from SPD695 if new information from the 4 new articles is changing your viewpoint. Many times the additional research will change your viewpoint. Maybe just a tiny bit, maybe a lot. Okay, but you can comment on that. All right, and then if you have not submitted all 12 of the PDFs, then you need to do that with your chapter 2. Okay, so like I said before, the big examples are in those research articles themselves. They'll show you how the authors chose to group the headings together and to come up with what their findings were for that research. Okay, and you'll find that sometimes the authors don't come up with any kind of a conclusion. And well, sometimes that happens in research. You don't get valid information. So just go ahead and make comments on that if that's the case. You know, that's just part of life. So hopefully the research that you do, this will give you enough information to where if you choose to do a research on your own, you can do that. You can set up your parameters. You can figure out everything that you want to work with. Figure out what your research question would be. Work on that. Set your plan down. Get your outline going, and then you can talk to your principal and see if you can get approval for the idea to start working on that idea. And don't be saddened if it takes more than a year to do it. Many research projects take substantially longer than a year to do, and that's quite okay. Very, very few are just simple and quick, okay, because you're looking for something specific. And so take your time and be able to do a good job with that. Okay. So any other questions that you might have? Okay, good. So if you do have a question, just shoot me an email and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. If you put a comment to me in the virtual office, please send me an email so that I will go there as soon as I can to take a look at your question. Okay, I know they're important to you, so they're important to me as well. I do have other classes that I teach, so sometimes I don't get into the same course every single day. So it might be a couple of days before I get back into the course. So if you have something that needs attention, then just shoot me an email, let me know, and I'll take a look at it, okay? And if it's a matter that you don't want other students to view, then just go ahead and communicate by email with me, okay? All right. Well, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you for coming and sharing a little bit of time with me to go over some of these points. Hopefully the little review of Microsoft Word was helpful. If you have any particular issues that are really bugging you about Microsoft, let me know and I'll help you with it. Okay, I've been using Microsoft for many, many years. I started using Microsoft when it came on those little those little tiny floppies. I don't know if any of you even have seen those little floppies, those little squares. And
3.5. I remember.
Yeah. I remember one of my first applications of Word, it was 32 of those little floppy disks that I had to insert into the computer one at a time. Yeah.
Oh.
And I mean, now you download Word off the internet, it takes you 10 seconds. But back in the day, it'd take an hour and a half to download all those floppies. And it was fun. I used to have boxes and boxes and boxes full of those little floppies. So
You sound like my dad. He was a software engineer at Lockheed, and we had everything. We had Windows, we had Word. My mom was driven crazy with all the floppies sitting around the house.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the end, they made good coasters for setting your drinks on, right? Thank goodness we're not in those days anymore. All right. I'll go ahead and let you get back to your lives. Like I say, I appreciate you spending some time tonight. And we won't have a meeting next week, but possibly the following week after that. If you feel that there's something that you need me to cover, I'm more than welcome to hold another meeting or even one-to-one Zoom meetings with you. It's fine. Okay, whatever you need, whatever help that you need, I'm there to help you, okay? All right. Good night, everybody.